Hey,
All right. You guys ready to get bullish as fuck or what?
you got
Oh, yeah. So by the way, it's guaranteed that we're gonna hit an
that
all-time
we're
high
gonna
while
hit an
while we're on
all-time
this
high
call.
while we're on this call. I was to say, yeah, British really timed it perfect for his appearance.
Let's go, guys. I don't know what it is. The universe just makes it happen. Me and Kenny
Oh.
just thought it happened. We got an ETF. We're going all-time high, and I'm live with you guys. Thank you guys for having me, Kenny, Colton, and everyone here. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, British, are you Satoshi?
Not yet. Maybe I'll transform and transcend.
All right. So it's probably a good thing that we have a hard cap at an hour because otherwise, I mean, we could talk for multiple hours about all the shit that I want to get to. So let's hop right into it. Maybe British, without compromising your pseudonymity. I don't know if that's how you say that word. Maybe give people an idea of who you are and your experience. And then I think a really interesting thing is kind of a little bit about how you got orange pilled and your journey since then.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been in the investment world for like 17 years. I started off negotiating real estate deals with my dad when I was extremely young. That moved over to equities and then ultimately gold and silver for like a 9, 10 year period. And then I realized how useless gold and silver were in 2020 when literally the every single thing that the gold and silver space say that should happen, which is going to propel gold to being what it should be, happened, and gold shat the bed. And so that's my background. I've been an investor since I first started. I've never had a real job. I've been involved in some form of business or investing sort of ever since I was extremely young. And as far as my orange pill story, I bought like $2,000 worth of Bitcoin sitting at a cigar lounge a few years ago, doubled it in 2 weeks, sold it because I thought Bitcoin was a piece of shit and didn't understand anything about what it was. It was just, this doesn't make any sense to me because I'm a gold guy. Um, and then, March of 2020, after lockdown happened, I was back in the UK and I just went for a walk and I was listening to the Bitcoin Standard. And the second day of my walk, I got to the part in the audiobook where he discusses stock to flow. And being a gold guy, the penny just dropped. And the moment the penny dropped, I had this, I still remember the feeling of feeling like I have fucked up and I am short on Bitcoin. And my first purchase was from the walk from the park to my home. I loaded up Coinbase, sent a wire transfer from my bank to Coinbase, and made my first purchase by the time I got home, and then proceeded to, put in a sizable amount into Bitcoin after that.
Yeah, that anxiety is real. I get hit with that anxiety pretty often where you're just sitting there doing something, and you'll be like, fuck, I really don't have enough Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so maybe so you have this thing that you've been saying, I'm not sure for how long, quite recently, where you basically say you have to do everything that you can do to get to one Bitcoin. If you're not doing something that makes you money and gets you closer to the goal of having one Bitcoin, figure out how to get one Bitcoin. Um, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what should people in here be doing to get to that goal?
People in here should be fucking panicking. And the reason for that is very simple. As Will Clemente, who you guys have Pomps had on a show, and I'm sure you guys, if you haven't already, you should get him to do a session with this cohort, says there's a 93% hodl rate right now, which means that 93% of all Bitcoin are being held and not sold. That's before we start going towards the next peak in this cycle. What's going to happen as we move towards that, right? That hodl rate is going to go up. So look, at the end of the day, you guys are in the perfect spot here where you're entering an industry that's growing. You're entering a sector that's going to get billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of investment into it. You're entering a sector that every single industry on
What's
earth
up?
is going to be interested in.
What's up?
So so you need to do whatever you can to get more Bitcoin and get to 1 Bitcoin as fast as humanly possible, because it's going to start running away from you right now. If you are not at 1 Bitcoin, like, personally, I think that the optimal place to be is 1 Bitcoin. Like, let's not set this on fire too early. But I think that the optimal place is 1 Bitcoin, and we can roll into why that might be as we go on.
Yeah, let's get into this. So for some of you may know, I shared a good video that British has up on his YouTube channel talking about the true opportunity of Bitcoin. But British has said he sees Bitcoin being $5 million per coin by the end of the decade, if not sooner, and we could talk about that. And the big thing with this is without any of our current systems collapsing. So without anything catastrophic happening to real estate, without anything catastrophic happening to the equities market, he still thinks that can be the case. Can you talk a little bit about why you see it that way, British? And then maybe it's a good time to hop into this like 100 to 1 multiple that Bank of America put out.
Yeah, so my thinking was put on, as anyone who follows me knows, like, I'm not part of the $10 a month DCA gang. I come from the institutional sort of background world. That's my space. So I focus on what the big money is going to do, and I focus on how fast they're going to come in, and I focus on how hard they're going to start buying. Just like today with this ETF, $990 million of volume on day one. On day one, the market loves Bitcoin. It's game over as far as that's concerned. So, Bank of America put out this study, and they said that for every, when Bitcoin was at a $1.1 trillion market cap, so about where we are right now, about $93 million moves the price up by 1%. Well, at 1.1 trillion, 1% is 11 billion. And you do 11 billion divided by 93 million, you're looking at 93 million, $1 increasing the price of Bitcoin by 118. $1 of fresh cash invested, increasing the price by $118 because of the hodl waves, because of how hard people hodl, because of the supply constraints, because of all the reasons that we love Bitcoin, right? And so when you look at it like that, you go, I don't know whether Bank of America is right or not. Fundstrat Tom Lee, who I also respect for being right in the face of everybody else saying, that the world was going to melt last year. He says it's 25 to 1. That's terrifying as well when you think about it, right? Because it means to get to a $5 million Bitcoin, approximately $100 trillion market cap, you only need $1 to $5 trillion going into Bitcoin in order for the price to get to 5 million. I mean, the US is going to print 6 trillion in the next few months for roads, right? What happens when people go, I've got 100 trillion in bonds and 85% of them are negative real yielding. Let me pull out $1 trillion and throw it into Bitcoin, and we've got a 93% hodl rate. What the hell happens when people go, you know what? This building that I've just raised a fund for, a real estate fund for, screw that, I'm just going to put it into Bitcoin because my board now said it's good because now it's an institutional asset. What happens when a retirement fund goes, we've got 100 billion to invest, let's put 50 billion of that into Bitcoin because now there's an ETF. So it's like nothing has to collapse. I'm not part of the group that's like, the US is evil, the US has to collapse. That's not me. I like to follow the big money and just looking at the big money. And you got to remember, the people that have been buying for the last 6 months, considering the Google trends are not even showing that the retail, quote unquote, dumb money, the retail money isn't even searching for Bitcoin yet. They haven't even opened up their Googles and typed in Bitcoin yet. And we're already approaching all-time high. We might even have passed it right now. So it's like, this is going to explode and nothing has to collapse in order for this to happen.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to hear what you think about institutions. So if we just think about hedge funds who may have allocated, corporates who may have allocated, their incentive is to say nothing until we're back at an all-time high or above, because then they're going to look like geniuses by announcing it. So once we cross through this all-time high here, do you see there being kind of a pretty big wave of institutional announcements, or maybe not so much?
I don't, to be honest with you, I don't care about that because it's amazing how much wealth is privately held. Right?
Yes.
Not everything is in the public market. And if you have, let's say you have $10 billion worth of Bitcoin and you're a privately held family office, why the hell would you want to tell anyone?
Yep.
I don't want to tell anyone. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, so that's really the interesting thing to me is everyone's been focused on corporate balance sheets, but corporate balance sheets account for like 4 trillion in liquid cash and cash equivalents. If you look at like high net worth individuals, that's 90 trillion. If you look at like mass affluent, that's 77 trillion. And then so if you kind of look at it that way, pension funds, that's another like 50 trillion. And so these are like way, way bigger opportunities than just corporations buying it for their balance sheet.
Fuck corporations. I don't care about corporations. Everyone's going on about corporations buying Bitcoin. Fuck corporations, because here's the thing. They need it for CapEx. They need it for reinvestment. They need it for growth. They need that cash flow. When they say we've put all of this money into Bitcoin, MicroStrategy is a very unique company because it doesn't have a high enough burn rate like Apple, for example. If Apple starts saying we've put all of our money into Bitcoin, the market goes, have you run out of ideas of innovation? Right? So now they start going, maybe we need to pull our money out of Apple because I invested in this because it's a tech company that's innovating. If Tesla goes and says, I'm going to put all of my money into Bitcoin, they go, have you guys run out of ideas to build cars and build the EV world? Because I thought you needed money to build that world. I don't care about corporations. I care about private wealth because the private wealth is what's trying to protect its wealth. And that's coming. That's already here because we can't already be at an all-time high. Pretty much like we're like what, $400 away, $500-600 away, something like that, of an all-time high when the retail money hasn't even started coming in without that old school money already being here in the market.
Definitely. So you write this, or recently started writing this really good. It's basically like a newsletter, but you do it through Telegram. So we'll share the link with people. And so you wrote a post, I think a couple of days ago, Bitcoin is love. And I think it was kind of a lot of the ideas that Saifedean talks about related to time preference in the Bitcoin standard. Can you share kind of some of your ideas from that post with people? Because I thought it was really great.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, like the responses I got from that, because people sort of realize I'm not actually like as angry as my tone sounds sometimes. So
that was one of the big things I liked about it, actually.
Yeah, like, look, at the end of the day, we live in a world where we are incentivized to not look out for the person to the left and the right of us. That's not how we live. That's not how we are wired. And that's not how our DNA is as human beings. We are wired to live in a community. We are wired to look out for people that we care about, that we love. And what Bitcoin allows you to do people really don't understand how soul sucking it is when you as an individual, whether you are a teacher, whether you are a doctor, whether you are, a police officer, whether you are in the military, whatever you do, whether you are a baker, like whether you're like anything, right? You have to sweat and bleed to earn that money. And then in order to just keep it, you need to become a professional speculator in order to just keep the value that you sweat and that you bleed to earn. That is so sucking environment to live in. And so, and the entire world currently is incentivized for you to do that. You either got to spend it because it's going to go down, or you got to invest it. And then when you invest it, you got a 95% chance of losing it. So just imagine living with that constant fear, and then wage inflation doesn't go up at the same price at the same rate as price inflation, asset inflation. So you're constantly getting poorer. Not only are you constantly getting poorer, it's then harder and harder to actually keep the value because of all the technological advancements in the investing world. So at the end of the day, I'm not surprised that people decide, maybe I should just go blow shit up. Like, I get it. I get how stressful that is, especially when you got kids, you got a family, like how, this is the incentive structure that we currently live in. And what Bitcoin does, and it's not really Bitcoin, it's the idea of sound money. Bitcoin is just the best iteration of sound money that we how money does and what Bitcoin does, it allows you to actually pause and think about the people around you because you actually have enough, right? And I come from a capitalist world, clearly, but I still don't agree with the idea and the message of just work harder and you can make it. When every single incentive in this structure that we live in right now is designed to keep people away from capital. Capitalism should not, we don't live in capitalism right now. When these banks are still here after 2008, we don't live in capitalism right now. This is an unfair system. It's as simple as that. And so either you are wired for speculation and you do really well, or you're lucky enough to be in assets and you do really well and you don't understand why you did really well. But there's a lot of people that don't deserve to be in places of power that are currently in places of power because their friends are printing money and they have access to it. And Bitcoin takes that away and finally allows you to be loving, be thoughtful, be mindful, pause, reflect, decide what your heart truly wants rather than what you need to do, and allows you to look at people as human beings.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the craziest things about hodling. And this is another tweet you put out that I liked is you took a picture of yourself from a cigar lounge and you basically said, when people ask you what you do, you say you're a professional waiter. And basically what you meant is that's all that you need to do is you need to buy a really good asset and you need to essentially love yourself enough to hold on to it. Because we want to do shit. We want to feel like we're making progress. And that's what kind of makes people want to trade and buy this shit coin that's going to 10x. And then they want to rotate into something. And if you know what you're doing, that might be fine. But the fact of the matter is that most people don't know what they're doing enough to do that. Right. And so I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'm a professional waiter. And I've been, listen, like, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I've been lucky enough to be rich before Bitcoin. So to me, it's like, I'm used to doing this. I can understand why people are coming into the Bitcoin space and just being told, just hodl and not understanding that, right? I get it. But it's the same thing with every other asset class, because at the end of the day, what you're actually investing in is you are investing in the Federal Reserve continuing to fuck itself. And it can't stop. It can't stop. So all you got to do is sit there on your hands and you're going to make money. And really sitting there on your hands, owning Bitcoin, what you're doing is you're believing in the future value that you have for this world. That's what you're doing if you own and you hold Bitcoin and you hold assets. You believe in your future value, because people that don't believe in their future value are out buying Gucci belts and popping bottles in clubs.
That's right. They're out there being island boys.
Exactly.
That's all the island boys. All right. Let's open it up for some questions. I want to give you guys the chance to ask British a question. So if you have a question, toss it in the Zoom chat or just put your hand up through Zoom. I saw a good question, but I lost it. Let me find it. So it was interesting. Hannah asked, are you anticipating all the fixed incomes fund money flowing in? And then Hansen replied, a lot of the negative yield fixed income is based on country mandates. Fixed income guys are too far down the risk curve to allocate to Bitcoin. So I'm also curious about this. What do you see, or what do you think is going to happen in terms of these pension funds and these insurance companies that have these really, really long dated liabilities? Eventually, they're going to realize they need to buy Bitcoin. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it definitely takes time. It's it's not going to happen quickly, but I think it happens a lot quicker than a lot of people think. So I don't think it takes 20 years, and I also don't think it takes 2 years, right? I think there is a risk curve, like the gentleman mentioned, like somewhere in there where it starts to make sense to allocate 2%, to Bitcoin. I'm not saying they're going to pull everything out, because, I'm pretty sure the US would drop a bomb on someone's head if they tried to do that. But, I can certainly see a 2% allocation.
Right. And I mean, look, a lot of these pension funds are already in venture capital and hedge fund investments. And if we're talking about risk, Bitcoin is quite a bit less risky than those types of investments. And I agree with you saying about 1%, but 1% of 50 trillion, and especially considering this multiple, whether it's 3 like Willie Woo says, whether it's 25 or whether it's 100 or 120, 1% or 2% of these $50 trillion asset classes is going to move Bitcoin's price by a lot and quickly too.
Yep. Yes, I absolutely agree with that. Like, and I personally think Willie's wrong. Now, Willie's way smarter than me when it comes to on-chain, and he can, I'm sure, throw numbers at me that would convince me that it's not 100, but I also don't think that it's 3. I think it's somewhere between 20 and 100.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. And so like over time, Bitcoin's going to suck the monetary premium out of all of these assets that people are using as money, but that aren't money. And so even if you say, all right, we're looking at the real estate market, which is 280 trillion globally, even if 50 basis points comes out of that market and goes into Bitcoin, and even if the multiple is only 20, that's still going to add a lot to the market cap. And so like, it doesn't really matter whether it's 20 or 50 or 100, we're still talking about really big numbers here.
Yeah, that's the thing that people don't get. Like, everyone says, oh, real estate's going to collapse. No, it's not. People still going to need houses to live in. More importantly, like not only are people going to need houses to live in, I think that luxury real estate is probably going to go up, right? Comparatively to like single family homes and things like that. So, real estate's not going anywhere, but it doesn't need to go anywhere. Like, I think that if you're in real estate right now, I think you're sitting on a very, very interesting precipice because, for example, in the UK, the average property price is 8 times higher than the average salary. That's the biggest spread we've ever had. And so either they need to slow down how fast real estate prices are going up, or they need to slow down, or they need to bring down real estate prices to shrink that gap, or there needs to be wage inflation. And if there's wage inflation, well, now there has to be inflation throughout the entire system. So either way you look at it, if you're looking at, individual asset classes, if you're in real estate, you got to be concerned at this point. Like Canada banned foreign investment in real estate. Not only did they ban foreign investment in real estate, they said, if you own real estate and you're a foreign investor, we're going to tax you on top of that. And so now try picking your fucking property up and moving it like you can do with Bitcoin.
Well said, sir. Frank, what's up?
That's great that you're talking about real estate and the Toronto real estate market, because that's where I'm from, and that's what my question is. So if you had to choose between putting a little bit of change in real estate or buying Bitcoin, it sounds like it's a pretty easy Bitcoin decision, but would there be any reason why you would buy a 1-bedroom condo in Toronto, for example, as an investment, as opposed to buying 1 Bitcoin or buying 2 Bitcoin?
You could not pay me to buy a 1-bedroom condo in Toronto in this market. Like it would be my background. I started off in real estate. I love real estate. I think it made me a lot of money. I think you can do a lot of creative things with real estate. It's a great wealth builder for a lot of people. But, I think the right time has to be there. And now is not the right time for real estate, for new real estate investors, especially as, they're not allowing the types of loan to values that you had when I was doing it. I was buying property and negotiating deals where we were completing deals and walking away with a cashback on the day of completion at a 2% interest rate. So it's like, you can't do that now. You're putting money into the thing. It doesn't work. When you're buying real estate for nothing, it's basically a credit game. You're playing the game of credit in that scenario, and you're trying to revolve that credit into different things. Now you're putting money into real estate. It's just stupid. And I think that it's going to real estate, I think so here's what I think is really going to happen out of the 3 options that I spoke about. I think that real estate and the economies around the Western world will experience some form of a combination of all 3. There is going to be wage inflation, there is going to be a slowing down of an increase in real estate prices, and there's going to be an effort to try and bring down real estate prices. I don't think that happens because real estate's a good, quote unquote, good hedge against inflation. But if you had to pick the best hedge, it's not real estate. And I think if you've got, like last year, I took my parents' property portfolio that they spent 35 years building. I bought them 1 Bitcoin for every property. And once Bitcoin passes $100,000, they have doubled the entire value of their real estate portfolio in a liquid asset inside of 1 year. It's insane.
Yeah. And so that's in a smaller scale and in a different way. it's pretty similar to what Michael Saylor did, where he spent 25 years building this company, MicroStrategy. And in the past 18 months or so, he's basically doubled all of the profits that the company's ever generated. It's kind of similar to that, and did it by leveraging your assets, right? And borrowing against your assets in order to buy more Bitcoin.
Yeah, I bought call options on MicroStrategy the day after he announced his first purchase of Bitcoin on the treasury. And then as soon as he did that, I thought, fuck, I need to find debt. I need to start leveraging some of these assets. So yeah.
Well, so British, I think that's important though. Like, I think people need to do whatever the fuck they can to make sure they get to 1 Bitcoin. 1 Bitcoin should be the goal. And then once you hit 1 Bitcoin, you should reevaluate and start to project in the future and say, well, what do I want to pass along to my kids and my grandkids, and kind of reevaluate from there. And so one way to do it is just work multiple jobs, work 16 hours a day instead of 8 hours a day. You can do that. But for a lot of people with families and children and other responsibilities, that's just not realistic. But a lot of these people have assets that they've built up over the past 20 years that they can leverage or do something, as long as they know what they're doing, and they can use that as a way to get more Bitcoin as well.
Yeah, the easiest way to get more Bitcoin right now is with a non-mark-to-market loan, which is the least riskiest way to do it. So the problem with, borrowing against your stock portfolio or borrowing on like, I guess a credit card's a pretty decent way, even though it's got a high interest rate. But borrowing against a commercial property portfolio, for example, would be that if the property value goes down, you need to top up the loan. Whereas if you've got a residential portfolio, you can borrow against it, and no matter what happens to the property value, you're not going to have to top up the loan. You can just continue paying it off. So yeah, look, my parents, their entire Bitcoin portfolio is paid for by the tenants, and they've doubled the value of it. So I think Michael Saylor is an amazing North Star for somebody like me, where he's got a brain which allows me to see what creative ways there might be to get more Bitcoin. For example, for me, one of the reasons why I started early saying that people might want to get some GBTC when all the Clubhouse morons were going on about Bitcoin being a better investment than GBTC, for example, like direct Bitcoin. And I agree, but the point is that when you have a financial brain, what you realize is that a company like Interactive Brokers or Charles Schwab will much easily do a stock loan against GBTC than any company is going to do a loan against Bitcoin, because the interest rates are 1.5% versus your 6 or 7%, whatever you're borrowing on Bitcoin. So GBTC is more useful until somebody like Goldman Sachs or NYDIG or someone like that starts loaning against Bitcoin at 3%. So that's why I built a pretty sizable GBTC position to use in that scenario where, the Bitcoin price comes down, I see it cross the 200-week moving average or get close to it, borrow a 25% loan to value against my GBTC position at 1.5% and buy more Bitcoin at that point. It's like the simplest fucking way to add more Bitcoin to your portfolio. And then borrowing against your property portfolio. I mean, like, if you have got property and you've got, let's say, a 25% loan to value, and you increase that 25% loan to value to 35% or 40%. I mean, look, anyone who's worried about property dropping 60%, like, I can't help you, because if that's your worry, like, nothing I say is going to convince you of anything. But you've got all that access sitting there, and you can get more Bitcoin. And if you don't have 1 Bitcoin, you will be a rich peasant in the world that we are going into. Simple as that.
Yeah, maybe really quickly, can you share some of your thoughts on GBTC with its discount and its probably inevitably becoming a spot ETF?
Yeah, I triggered a bunch of people on Twitter today when I said that GBTC right now is probably a better investment than, for a certain part of the portfolio than Bitcoin, because you're buying, $100 worth of Bitcoin for $80. All you've got to do is hodl it. And anyone who's triggered by that doesn't understand what hodl means. Like, if you can hold GBTC for a 5-year period, it's better than Bitcoin right now, in my eyes, at least for a certain percentage of your portfolio. You definitely should have some Bitcoin, real Bitcoin, but GBTC is a great hold. Yes, it has a 2% fee, but now the ETFs come out. I predict they're going to start becoming competitive with that. They've also just filed for the conversion to a spot ETF, which they filed under the 33 Act, I believe. So it's probably going to take 270 days for that review process. So that's going to happen if it happens in 22. But either way, it's still a good investment because you've got, you know, the underlying spot. It will be converted because it's got 600,000 plus Bitcoin. And it's the best one. They've actually been reporting more than they needed to report in preparation for becoming an ETF. So they're doing great.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. Hannah?
Yeah, I was just wondering about holding the GBTC in a retirement account, because that's the concern. You can't buy Bitcoin right now through a lot of retirement accounts. So if you're holding GBTC, my concern would be that when that goes up in price, once it reaches a certain threshold, well, in the US at least, they'll just say, okay, well, you know, this is too much wealth, so now we're just gonna tax whatever and make up some tax and then just take it.
Yeah, you know, like that's the problem that American citizens have, is that you guys are taxed based on citizenship, whereas for me, I'm taxed based on residency, right? So I can go and change, if I can hold my British passport, go and live in Dubai, and if I match a particular test, I can now be taxed at Dubai tax rates, unlike an American where I'm still taxed on American tax rates. You know, the benefit of that is that until and unless they come out with an unrealized capital gains tax or an unrealized gains tax, you're going to be fine. If they come out with anything like that, you just borrow against it and you're fine. So I'm not really too worried about that. Plus, there's services out there, right, where you can hold Bitcoin in your IRA, from what I understand.
Yeah, you can now.
Yeah, so you've got options, but at the end of the day, holding GBTC in your retirement account is, you know, one of the fucking smartest things that you can do, I think, right now.
Yeah, and would you say this analogy is right? Is that I bought a bunch of GBTC yesterday with some money that I have in my retirement account after someone was explaining this to me. It's basically like you're buying a piggy bank with $100 in it, and you're buying it for $80 right now. You just don't know when you're going to be able to crack the piggy bank open and get all the money that's in there.
Yeah,
it's essentially what's happening.
Yes, as long as you can hold it for 5 years, you're good. As long as you can hold it for 5 years, you're good.
And I think for most people that applies to Bitcoin itself too. Like I usually tell people, like if you're buying Bitcoin, your minimum time frame should be 5 years, hopefully much, much longer than that. Yes. Like you're gonna, there's very, very few things that can happen to you negatively if that is your time horizon.
Absolutely. And, you know, I understand that your course and this course that you guys are in is really designed to sort of help you guys work in this industry. But I think it's important for you to understand the potential of Bitcoin so that when you're talking to any future potential employer, you can actually help them understand why it's beneficial to stay in this asset for a long period of time and what's happening and the extent to which this is happening. So, you know, a lot of people are you know, you hear so much bullshit around Bitcoin and the crypto world. Like, I'm not one of those Bitcoin maxis that thinks the crypto world is going to disappear. I just don't think that happens. I'm not saying everything's going to be valuable, but I don't think everything's going to disappear. I think there will be some value to it. I decided to put 0.3% of my net worth into NFTs, and I got canceled on Twitter 3 times in a week.
By the, as I like to call them, the Bitcoin communists, essentially people who, if you don't abide by every single part of their doctrine, you're canceled. And it's ridiculous because that's what we're all trying to move away from. And what these people are, British, is they're just assholes. And so if they were vegans, they would be annoying asshole vegans. If they were CrossFit people, they'd be annoying asshole CrossFit people. It just so happens that Bitcoin is what they've chosen. And they became moderators on Clubhouse, and they think they're all that. They're just being communists is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, they're just, I just call them closet communists because at the end of the day, I'm a capitalist. And, you know, part of capitalism is losing money. Part of capitalism is losing money. And I think everybody has the right to make and lose money. And the beauty of capitalism compared to the old systems where I can rip your throat out is that you get to put your money where your mouth is. I get to put my money where my mouth is. And guess what? We'll see who's right. One of us is going to win, one of us is going to lose, or one of us is going to win big and one of us is going to win much less. So at the end of the day, we'll find out what the right answer is. But yeah, look, guys, understand the opportunity here, because it's much bigger than what a lot of people think. And especially now that the institutional world has got involved. I love that, we literally organized this and we had no idea that an ETF was going to start trading today. So the coincidences that are happening today are absolutely unbelievable. Now that the institutional world is in, you are going to see growth like you've never seen before. These players have not been able to access this market yet.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, British has been tweeting Bitcoin ETF approval in 30 days guaranteed for like 6 months now. And so it's actually really pretty awesome that we're all chatting on the day that the ETF was approved. And just so if some of you guys haven't looked, the inflows to this ETF, which is a futures-based ETF, are roughly $1 billion, and that's the second biggest. It might end up as the biggest by the time, I guess, it's 5 o'clock now. The only bigger is BlackRock's ESG fund, their carbon bullshit whatever fund, and so that's pretty interesting. And so just think about the fact that, like, most people, I think everyone agree that a spot ETF at some point in the future is inevitable. If $1 billion in capital flowed into this futures product, which most people say isn't great, just imagine what's going to happen when the spot ETF gets passed. It's going to be pretty wild.
It's going to be insane. You know what? You know when that's going to happen? It's going to happen when Larry Fink says Bitcoin's a good investment. Because we can argue about, the SEC's approval process and all this other stuff. The SEC listens to people who, are the market makers, and once the market makers say this is a good product, they sort of step out of the way of it. So, as far as everyone's shitting on the ESG narrative, Bitcoin is ESG friendly, guys. That's the message. That's the message point. Like, let's start arguing. Let's start talking like, the vegans and the protesters. That's what we need to do. We need to start talking like those people, because they actually get shit done. Being a libertarian gets fucking nothing done. You need to start blowing over police cars. You need to start telling people that Bitcoin is ESG friendly, because that's a $50 trillion investment market. And I want that in Bitcoin. I don't care that it's wrong. I don't care that it's wrong. I don't care that Bitcoin doesn't, Bitcoin's energy profile is good for the world. Just say it's ESG friendly. Everyone needs to just start, going after this. Pomp needs to start going after this. Like, Bitcoin is ESG friendly. He needs to tell Kevin O'Leary. Kevin O'Leary can whisper it into, Larry Fink's ear, and then we can start getting access to the $50 trillion market. Just play the damn game. Too many people are too attached to their values, and they don't want to play the damn game. And that's what slows adoption. We need to start playing the damn game like smart capitalists.
Oh, yeah. Jonathan, and then Jake, it looks like, has some questions in the chat, but let's go to Jonathan first.
Thanks, Kenny. Actually, it was a good lead into my question. British, thanks for doing this. This is really awesome. My question's about the big institutions. You spoke about Larry Fink, people like Jamie Dimon. I don't think Jamie Dimon's an idiot, and he's certainly not surrounded by people who are idiots. Like, what's going on over there? How are they looking at this whole thing? How are they looking at the ETFs, and how do you think they're looking at Bitcoin in general?
I think Jamie Dimon is sitting there, and he's got the whole of the team figuring out how they can monetize and generate money from Bitcoin. I genuinely think that's what's going on. I think, when Jamie Dimon looks at $1 trillion asset and says, how do you know that it can't go past 21 million? Have you read the algorithms? He's got 1,000 people being paid 300,000 plus a year to look at those algorithms. He knows exactly what the fuck's going on. And he's just being himself. He's doing exactly what I would do if I was the CEO of JP Morgan, which is playing the market. He's doing it. None of us would do any different to what the Wall Street guys are doing. I would manipulate the market down so I can get myself into it, and I can get my clients into it. And then I would manipulate the market up. And that's exactly what I would do. And anyone who says differently hasn't got a brain. It's very simple. You got to understand the game. You got to start playing the game.
Yeah, I agree with that. Jake, do you want to ask? I think you had a couple in the chat, but do you want to just come off mute?
Would love to. Thanks, Kenny. British, thanks so much for chatting with us today. I have a question with you with regards to the sort of like waypoint investment mark that you've mentioned with 1 Bitcoin per person or per investor. Wanted to ask if that changes on relative scale. So let's say 1 Bitcoin is 100% of net investable assets for somebody, wherever their stage of life in, versus, what if 1 Bitcoin is say 5% of net investable assets? That is an associated question to a larger question I have for you with regards to portfolio allocation. Right? Are you comfortable sharing with us how much of your net investable assets you have in Bitcoin and how much you would encourage us to be thinking about allocating towards Bitcoin?
Yeah, let's get into it. So the 1 Bitcoin thing is very simple. If Bitcoin's going to, let's say it's going to a, let's say it's going to $10 million a coin, right? Like over an extended time period, just to make the math easy. If you own 0.2 of a Bitcoin, your net worth in that time is going to be $2 million. $2 million isn't enough today. Like, I don't know what type of life people are living, but you can't even buy a house and have enough left over for retirement with $2 million today in a reasonable neighborhood. So people really need to wake the fuck up. Like, wage inflation and the lack of wage inflation has really got people living in this daydream where they think, oh, I'm going to pursue my passions and I'm going to pursue what makes me happy. And I'm going to pursue, what's good for the world. I'm going to hug all the trees and I'm going to do kumbaya with everyone. You're going fucking broke. You are drowning right now. And you're going to get squeezed, because if you're the only 2 ways in the world that we are going into to have a good life is either be extremely poor, right? Because typically when they start printing money, your life's going to actually get marginally better if you're extremely poor, because they'll just give you shit. Or you get extremely wealthy. And for me, that number is $10 million at this moment in time. That's at today's money, not in 10 years' time, at today's money. $10 million, because that allows you to buy escape velocity with your wealth. $10 million. If you're in the middle, you're going to get fucking squeezed. You're being boiled right now. You don't even know you're being boiled. Should I tell you why? Because oil prices are up 85%. You're being boiled right now. Coffee prices are up 60%. You are being boiled and you don't even know it yet. And people go, oh, you're such an elitist. The average person can't get to 1 Bitcoin. Shut the fuck up. I'm not talking about being average. If we want to talk about being average, you need to find another guest. That's not me. I don't want to live an average life. I'm talking about puffing Cuban cigars all day. I'm not talking about living an average life. You want to live an average life? Get your 0.1 Bitcoin, go and dance around on Clubhouse and talk about hodling for the rest of your fucking life. That's not my life. I don't want that life. I don't want that life for my children. I don't want that life for their children. That's not what I'm building for. I'm building for an exceptional life. If you want that, you better get some damn urgency and you better get to that 1 Bitcoin, because that's what you're going to need for escape velocity. Otherwise, you are just going to be you're going to be like the richest peasant, so to say, in the world that we are creating. So that's where we're at. As far as allocation goes, I probably have about 50% of my portfolio in actual Bitcoin. And then I have a large amount at this moment in time in leveraged vehicles, which puts me over the 100%. So overall, I'm probably got about a 250% exposure to Bitcoin compared to my net worth. So I'm like irresponsibly long, which I think is actually kind of responsible in this market right now, which that will come down, by the way. And I'm doing that by investing in mining stocks. Again, I have 17 years worth of experience. Number one, I have, a tax setup where I pay 0 taxes on my investing, so I can do these things where some people might not be able to do them, because just by paying the tax, it makes the investment worthless, right? So you got to look at what your setup is like. But that will also be one of the things I would urge everyone to pursue. Get yourself into a situation where you can pay 0 tax, because then it opens you up to do many creative things. Like, for example, I go and buy call options on HOT or Mara when it was at the bottom of the market, and based on my calculations, I'm going to get, a 10x return to Bitcoin. Well, now I can take that and buy more Bitcoin with it. So being a little bit extra smarter allows you to do these things. And this is the same as borrowing money against a property portfolio, right? Or borrowing money against a stock portfolio, or borrowing money against your Bitcoin. But the key point is you've got to be smart about it, because the risks are you lose your Bitcoin and you can never buy it again. That's the risk. So you have to be extremely smart with it.
Yeah, this is, I don't know if you see the chat at all, British, but everyone's saying that you're a fucking savage and they love you. And I agree. Didn't I tell you guys you're going to want to smash your head through a fucking wall by the time the conversation's done? I said it. I wasn't lying. I really meant it. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your thoughts. And see, this is the thing about British, though, is he's willing to have these conversations because he understands this stuff. So when you ask these questions to a lot of people, they just say, oh, no, buy Bitcoin and HODL and don't do anything else. It's because they don't have any experience in the market. And that's the only answer that they can actually give you without just lying to your face. And so because you're here and we're having these conversations or talking about these topics, I want to ask you at least how you're thinking about potentially trying to time the market top in order to increase your Bitcoin stack. And remember, guys, like the game that we're all playing is get more Bitcoin, end up with more Bitcoin than you started with. And so this is something that I've been having a lot of trouble with myself, because I've worked multiple jobs for many years now in order to get as much Bitcoin as I can. And I'd be absolutely heartbroken if I lost that Bitcoin, because I'd essentially set myself back multiple years. And so I'm really hesitant to try to do anything cute, but I also would love to, increase my Bitcoin stack by 1.5x, 2x. So what are you thinking about with trying to time the market top?
Yeah, look, I have, I don't think I'll try touching my core Bitcoin or GBTC position. But the call options that I have on mining stocks, the call options that I have on Bitcoin will obviously need to be closed out because there's expirations attached to those. So for that, what I'm looking at is a few different things. I'm looking at the Pi cycle top indicator, which is, everyone says, oh, you can't time the market. The Pi cycle top indicator has timed every single top in the Bitcoin market so far in its history. So, yes, okay, cool. Maybe you can't time the next top because something's fucking changed. But until then, I'm still going to look at it, and I'm still going to look at how this sort of relates to each other. I'm looking at the HODL waves. I'm learning about that right now. I'm looking at the Puel multiple. And I think that there are enough indicators to understand how this market sort of works. And of course, my one thing that got me into Bitcoin was the stock to flow. So I'm watching those things to understand like when the market might be overheated and when to take action. Now, if I decide to sell, I'm going to trigger all of the Bitcoiners, because when I think that the market is topped out, I'm going to go on my Twitter and just post top and not post anything else and just see what happens, right? Because if I get it right, that's going to be interesting. That's going to be interesting in history. If I get it wrong, I'll just get railed on and it's going to be another day on Twitter, right? So that's what I'm looking at. But if I manage to do that, I'm looking at, 3xing my Bitcoin position, because I think the market will get overheated. The market structure seems to be changing at this moment in time. I want to see what happens. And when I'll know that if we experience the 82 to 85% correction that we normally see. The other indicator that's pretty interesting is the logarithmic growth curve, which actually has a more bearish price target than what everyone wants it to be. It's somewhere in the region of 135 to 155 by the end of the year. So we'll see. I think the market goes in one of two ways. Either it's the same 4-year cycle where we see a big run up, a blow off top, and then an 82, 85% correction the first time round, or we run up, we correct 50 to 60%, and then we run up again. And then we correct 50 to 60%, and then we run up again. If that's happened, the market has completely changed and you need to act accordingly. And here's the thing, for people like me, that's better. That's way better, because I can actually start executing my skills that I have in the normal markets to acquire more Bitcoin from the people that think, they're cute enough to try and do these things with. But if the market is still the same market that it's always been, well, then you're going to see an 80% fucking correction. That's a huge opportunity.
Thanks. Tom, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thanks, Kenny. Hey, British, thanks for spending the time with us. I really appreciate your fresh candor about these subjects. I wanted to ask,
kind of already answered it in your last statement a little bit.
Is he
What do you
cutting
think
out
of?
or just for me?
Yeah, Tom, your audio's not great. Can you try to speak right into the mic?
Yes. Thank you. In short, can you give me your opinion? And I know you just made a statement about mining companies, but I invest also in call options in, HUD, Mara, Riot, and a few others. Is that recommended? Obviously, I would like to hear your view on it.
I didn't catch all of that, but I think your question, just not if I'm right. I think your question was which mining stocks I'm looking at. Is that right?
Just in general, is that a good strategy?
Yeah, look, I think that it's certainly a riskier strategy than just holding Bitcoin. Like I want everybody to understand, just holding Bitcoin is the safest thing you can do. It's safer than holding cash, as we all know, right? I think we're all on the same page on that. Now, when you're starting to look at other creative things you can do, I think you should, if you're just sort of at that level where you've got one Bitcoin, I think you don't do anything with that one Bitcoin. You hold on to that one Bitcoin, hold on for dear life to that one Bitcoin. I think if you're past that level, then you can start doing creative things. I like it. I like the mining stocks for short-term exposure because I do call options rather than actually holding the mining stocks. I think they'll do really well. What I like to watch is what their multiple is to Bitcoin. And when the multiple shrinks to Bitcoin, and you can easily find that out, right? You look at how much Bitcoin they hold on their balance sheet, you find out what the market value of the Bitcoin is, and then you basically judge when it's close to that, when it's a 2x multiple to the value of Bitcoin versus a 9x multiple to the value of Bitcoin, and then you know when to sort of get in or place some options. But yeah, I own a ton of like hot $20 and $22 call options for the end of next year. And I think it's going to be a great trade. Today has been great because it's been coming down and confirming the breakout that we saw, which is what Mara did on October 14th.
What do you think about Hut 8 in particular?
I like Hut 8. Yeah, that Hut 8 and Mara are my two biggest positions as far as the call options go. So yeah, I like them.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, yeah, thanks, Tom. Johnny, do you want to ask a question? And then we'll probably be cutting it close with time. So maybe we'll wrap after that and we'll give ourselves some time to close things out.
Yeah, thanks, Yanni. So, British, I was wondering, what are your thoughts on Evergrande's default that's supposed to be on 23rd of October, so next week?
Yeah, I don't think that it's going to have that much of an impact anymore. I think it was slightly overblown. And I think China will sort of manage that pretty well. Most importantly, I think this, the one fucking moron that really annoyed me was Robert Kiyosaki, who tweeted out that there's a giant stock market crash coming in October. And I have bookmarked his tweet because the moment he said that, I went and bought a fucking position in SPXL and TQQQ, which are triple leveraged ETFs on the US stock market, on the S&P and QQQ. And I can't wait to show everybody those performance results, to stop listening to these doom and gloom morons that keep saying the same thing over and over again, and it never ever happens. Look, you guys are, if we are living in a time where America is in a fantastic position to take advantage of Bitcoin. Not only is it in a fantastic position, it is actually taking advantage of Bitcoin. It's the number one mining space in the world now. It's got the most clear regulation. It's got the most slowest regulation, which allows people to gain confidence in this asset as it grows. That might frustrate us Bitcoiners, but it's fucking amazing for people who are in this space, in the institutional space, because it makes them understand that people are thinking about this, right? Rather than just running headfirst into it. So, trying to bet against America there's been the dumbest trade for the last 100 years, 200 years, and it's going to be the dumbest trade for the next 100, 200 years. So, China, as far as China goes, China makes a stupid monetary decision periodically in their history. The last time was they went over to a silver money standard when the world went over to gold. And now it looks like they want to move on to a gold money standard when the world's moving on to Bitcoin. So congratulations, China. You keep fucking up. They keep stealing US intellectual property. They stole, I think, Lockheed Martin's intellectual property for fighter jets. They built the damn jets. Their pilots are so shit, they flew them straight into the ground. So it's like, okay, cool. Let's, I don't think there's going to be ever a kinetic war between the US and China. If there is, the US will destroy China. And I think economically, one of the things that I really respected about President Trump, I don't care what your politics is. And to be honest, I don't like, I'm a capitalist. I care about what you're going to do for my money, right? So one of the things that I really respect about what he said, he was honest about it, was that they said, are you looking to invade North Korea? It was one of these gotcha questions, right? And he said, I'm not looking to invade anyone. Maybe I'm looking to invade them economically, right? Which is the game plan. That's what the US does. That's been the game plan for the last 100 years. It's economic invasion. And as a result of Bitcoin, the US is going to be able to economically invade the entire fucking world in one foul swoop because everyone else's currencies go to shit. And you can have a world stabilized on the US dollar and a Bitcoin standard. That is the most powerful position for the world to be in. People hate the US dollar. And it's amazing to me how many, like, I have to be more patriotic than Americans. It's quite confusing to me. But the fact that we can live in a world where we have Bitcoin as a currency and US dollar as a currency and all these other small countries that are currently being courted by China and by Russia for support, et cetera, can move over to Bitcoin referenced in US dollars and have US dollar support. My God, the world moves over to a US standard in a very, very short period of time, and it's effortless. So it's going to be great. And I think China is going to have a very, very fun time. Do you know, a lot of people don't know, China has a 5x5 office built for every single citizen in China right now. That's the current supply of office space in China. You think that's not a fucking bubble? So this thing it's going to explode. And I think the US is going to win. And I think the US should win.
Get me fired up, British. I love the chat comments. Everyone's getting fired up, which I guaranteed. I knew that you guys would. So it's funny. I turned Twitter notifications on for British like last week, and we confirmed this conversation. Figured see notifications. If anything's interesting, I'll jot it down so we can have some interesting things to talk about. I'm not taking those notifications off. Man gets me fired up. So I want you guys to make sure that you follow him on Twitter. British, maybe if you want to put your Twitter handle, or I can put it in Slack as well. I'll make sure that people have your Twitter. Is there anywhere else you want to direct people to stay in touch with you?
You can go to the Telegram. If you go to if you just go to BritishHODL.io, I think that takes you to Telegram as well. But yeah, look, guys, fuck me, fuck everyone. What you need to do is you need to get to 1 Bitcoin. If you're not at 1 Bitcoin, everything you do should be focused on getting to 1 Bitcoin, whether it's getting a job, getting, I don't know, like people say, oh, I've got too many time commitments. Shut the fuck up, because you're spending 4 hours a day on Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse. Like, stop making excuses, really evaluate your time, figure out where you're spending your time. You're in a world right now where you can start a business from home using this same technology that you're using right now for us to have a conversation, and you can start creating value and saving that value in Bitcoin. And I cannot stress how urgent this is, because very soon it's going to run away from you, and it's running away from you right now, and you are boiling without knowing that you're boiling. Go read the study on when they put a frog in a pan and they turn the water up slowly and the frog just dies because it doesn't realize that it's sitting in hot water. That is the world that you are living in right now. And the only way out is hard assets. And the hardest asset is Bitcoin that everyone has access to. And you can do everything possible right now to get to at least 1 Bitcoin. Once you have 1 Bitcoin, get to 6.15 Bitcoin, right? Like just keep going. Like, Bitcoin is a savings tool. It's a tool that's going to allow you to get closer to who you are as a human being. It's going to allow you to express your soul and the purpose that you are here for on this earth in a much better way, because it's going to protect the value that you create. You're going to be a more loving person. The world is going to become more loving. And this is the revolution. Bitcoin, to me, is the North Star that humanity has been searching for.
Very well said, sir. I absolutely could not agree more. Thank you. That was really awesome. That was a lot of fun.
You're welcome,
I'm going to
guys.
stop the recording here. I want to give everyone a break before we start back up at 6. But I can hang if anyone has any questions.